Hiring employees. This video will focus on hiring employees in California, although if you are hiring employees in a different state, much of the content in this video will be very similar. Each state will govern their own hiring rules and regulations of what companies can and should not do. If you're hiring in California, it does require extensive federal and state paperwork. Be sure to research the state of California's Employment Development Department for the most current laws and regulations. You can find them at edd.ca.gov. They are the greatest first source for you to get information, ask questions, and manage your accounts. Be sure to read up on those. There's many good articles and posts on how to start out, including frequently asked questions and modules on hiring and training. Understanding hiring in California is important. Oftentimes it takes an expert, someone experienced in this type of work, in order to implement this in your business. If you are unsure, always consult with an attorney as a first step. This is something that will keep your business out of a lot of trouble. The information provided here may have changed, and it may not be applicable to your specific business. So make sure you strategize and develop a system for your specific business and consult with an attorney in order to get advice and create your own strategy. One of the things that I found interesting is that California is an at-will state. At-will meaning that an employer can fire an employee at any time without cause, without prior warning, for any legal reason or for no particular reason at all. So this means that many employees can be hired and they can be fired without any warning. Although this is something you have to adopt, and you have to create a contract in order to make it applicable for your business. So even though that you may have the right to do this, you need to create a strategy in order for you to be able to enjoy that right. Enjoy probably not being the best word to use, because oftentimes businesses do not choose to become at-will businesses because employees don't like to be working for at-will businesses. Oftentimes there's a probationary period, though, where businesses enjoy this at-will period. And so you might have heard that you're going to be working in a probation, or you're going to be working for a time period at the beginning of your employment where the employee can see if you're a good fit or not. And so at this point, oftentimes businesses are choosing to be at will during that probationary period in order to see if there is a reason why the employee should be let go. Maybe they're not a good match. Maybe there's an issue that they didn't catch in the screening process. After that, then employees might go beyond it to a different stage where they have a different process if they will be let go rather than an at-will process. So again, I emphasize that it's important to consult an attorney to create your own contract outlining how you want to handle employees, because much of the decision making is up to you and your strategy of how you're going to manage your employees. There's lots of information and things that you can do, but it might not be advantageous to your company. One of the things you want to do is create an environment where your employees feel like they have work, they feel like they're treated fairly, and they will be productive during their employment. A lot of that can be done by handling the employee contract that you have with your employees. That being said, if you don't have a contract, the contract often falls to the rules and regulations of the state, which can be very broad and might not benefit you as a company. So creating either an employee handbook or some type of contract is usually to your advantage. One of the things that's really important when you start out with hiring an employee is creating a job description. A job description is a written description of the essential knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed to fill a position when hiring the worker. This is really important to make sure that the person coming in for the job knows what they are interviewing for, knows the type of work that they're applying for to make sure it's a good fit. It also decreases the amount of candidates you might have that might not be qualified to do the position, and it saves you a lot of time. It also helps you finding the right candidates. So when you're seeking those types of employees, you can create a strategy in order to find the right ones. Employee fit is how well the needs and culture of the small business matches the expectations and the skills of each employee. When there's a good employee fit, both parties are happy. They're both working productively and enjoying the relationship. Oftentimes that's a result of having a good employee fit. Another part that's really important is the job description. So writing the job description. Another tip that you can use in creating this is to look at what other companies are offering for a similar job. You can often do that through websites like monster.com or 1T Online. Is that a right website? Oh, ONET Online. I hadn't seen it for a while. Yes, you can look for an occupational search and you can see kind of the descriptions of this type of work. By reviewing their work, you don't copy the job description, but you can see what's important. And so if you go here and you type in graphic designer, you can see the code and you can see what their common tasks are, what technology skills they might need, what knowledge, skills, abilities, activities, all these things. You're like, oh, that's what they need to do. This is what they need to be doing. And you can pick and choose the ones that are important to you, and this is really helpful for you to create a job description. And this is something that you can create questions for in the interview process. This is something where you can create a test where you can see if they're actually able to do this job. So in creating the job description, you usually want to start with a title of what the position is about. Then you would want to give a brief overview of the job. You would want to describe the requirements. What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities for this job? What credentials and experience you're looking for? And finally, list any special requirements that you might need. When interviewing candidates, it's very important to consult with an attorney to make sure that you're doing it in a correct way. There might be state or federal rules and regulations that you want to follow to make sure you're not discriminating against candidates, that you're treating them fairly, and you're following the procedures. It's usually a good idea to create specific questions you will ask of all the candidates so that you're treating all the candidates similarly. It's often okay to ask the person to demonstrate their skills to make sure that they can actually perform that. And you might want to consider involving one or more interviewees so that you're not the only one performing the interview. This is often a good idea to save yourselves from having a situation where it was just you and the candidate, and if there was ever an issue, you would have someone to be a third party. So again, all these things are pretty standard, but they may change, and it may be different from your state, where this might not be a good idea of following kind of these standard things. So you always want to consult with an attorney just to make sure that you're on the right path. So question, is it better to hire someone moderately qualified because you need someone soon, or to wait until you find the right person? Oftentimes, entering into an employer contract or situation requires a lot of paperwork, and also it puts a lot of responsibility on the employer to provide work for that employee. And so state and federal laws oftentimes benefit the employee. So making sure that someone is qualified could be a longer term solution for you is often more of a priority than hiring someone right now that may not be qualified and may not fit for long term. So there may be long-term consequences for hiring someone short-term. So make sure you understand the rules and regulations, and oftentimes it's better to wait and find the best person that you can, and rather than the person that's right there right now. Rewarding employees. So there is just pay for your employees, and you could look at what the minimum wage is for your area and pay them that. But one of the things that employees are known to do is that once they're paid rewards for their work, and this means usually just above and beyond the minimum, these types of rewards make the employee more productive. So some of the things you consider is, what is their incentive? Oftentimes when people receive a living wage, that means enough salary wages for a person or family to meet the basic necessities of life from a single full-time job. If someone can receive this, oftentimes they will not be looking for the next job or anything higher in pay just to be out of that situation where they're not receiving enough resources or salary or wages in order to pay for the basic needs. So paying that living wage will often create a more stable environment where the person is willing to work and not be thinking about things that they need to afford and they can't afford just to meet the basic necessities. That being said, some employees don't always value pay as the most important part of a business. So many people want to work part-time, or they want to have certain times or days of the week where they can work. They want maybe specific benefits, so those benefits might be more important than the pay. They might appreciate bonuses or being paid on some type of incentive that is based on their performance. They may want some other perks. They may just want to be working in an industry. So it's often good to understand the person and find out what motivates them or what interests them. And if you even can't afford to pay them a living wage, these other things might be more important to them, where you can find the best qualified candidate and be able to reward them so that they are productive in their work. Training. So this is up to the employer most often, is to provide some training. Yes, you can hire someone who is trained and able to do that job, but over time, people often need to be retrained. And so providing training, whether you're doing it within the business or if you're funding them to get trained outside of the business, is an investment. So there is a cost to hiring each new employee. Oftentimes paying for the training is cheaper than the loss of experience and know-how of a good employee, and then having to hire somebody new, get them up to speed on this type of job. So think about what is your training schedule for your employees and how it can help you create a long-term relationship with your employees. One of the things that's really important to understand about employees is the scope of authority. This means, what are you asking them to do specifically for your business? It is the power delegated to an agent under an agency agreement for carrying out the principal's business or instructions. And so if an employee is doing what they're told to be doing, you are legally, or the company is legally liable for that employee's actions. If the employee is doing something that is outside of what you tell them to do, then the company may not be legally liable for their activities. So this is why oftentimes you'll see in a bank, you'll see a security guard, but they are not working for the bank, right? That's to keep a differentiation between the workers of the bank and what they do, and then hiring independent contractors like security guards to do their work. So oftentimes at a bank, the employees are told not to get into the middle of a situation where there's somebody robbing the bank, because that's not their scope of authority. The securing of the bank should be done to this outside company. So oftentimes the liability is an issue, and employees are told what they specifically can and can't do. And when the employee acts outside of that, they could be acting as an individual rather than an employee. So it's important to discuss, again, with your attorney, what is the scope of authority for your employees, and to become very knowledgeable about this, because again, when you hire employees, they are an extension of the business, and you can become legally liable for any of the actions that they perform. One of the keys parts about scope of authority argument is that firms just can't say this is what they do and have that become a legal argument if it ever gets to court or ever becomes an issue. Employers have to train and enforce the exact authority of employees. That means if employees are going outside of the scope of authority and the company is not doing anything about it, even though it's written down that they're not supposed to do these types of activities, if it's not enforced, then it can become a situation, well, yeah, it was just written down, but it was never enforced, so the company is still liable for those actions. So make sure that you pick policies that are within the scope of authority and then you enforce them. Sometimes it can be tough when you have to discipline or even let go a worker because they're going outside of the scope of their authority, but it pays in the long term to enforce those activities, and that keeps your scope of authority sound. Next up are financials.